So many ding dongs.
Is that a statement about the sound or the people on the call?
I would only refer to myself as a ding dong. I wouldn't suggest that about any of my team members who are excellent at what they do.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for joining. So this is the Ask Me Anything about GitLab releases and deployments with the delivery team. So I'm Amy Phillips, Engineering Manager for Delivery. We're joined by quite a few people from delivery as well to answer your questions. To make this slightly meta, trying to explain that this is, as delivery team, we are focusing on deploying and releasing GitLab. So all the code to do with GitLab, we are moving through to production. So we will run through some of these questions. We may not be the experts because I think some of these may cover the features of deployments and releases for GitLab users. But we shall see if we have someone on the call who may be able to help out. So, John, do you want to verbalize your question? We'll see if we have someone who can help you out.
Yeah, so you're right. I did have a bit of a misunderstanding as to what the meeting entailed. So my questions are more around the features of GitLab releases and deployments. So forgive me if these questions aren't necessarily appropriate, but I'm actually going to start with Jamie's question down at number 3. Just to confirm how we count deployments. We use usage ping a lot in customer success, and deployments is a great metric that we like to show customers and how they use it. And we're just not sure what ticks the box or increments that deployment counter. Is it the presence of an environment in a job definition?
I think I can help here. Okay. So
great, please go.
Yeah, okay. Again, as Hemi said, this is something that we are user as well, because it's something that developed by the release group, but we know we contributed some part of it, so we may help answering this question. So yes, if there is an environment label in your CI job, this will be recorded as a deployment, and we increased the number, but we also implemented API support for it. So if you have special requirement, you can do API call to GitLab and record your own deployment, which means that you have also more granularity. You can record a deployment started and then maybe it failed later on, or it got completed, or you can just say, yeah, I did this, it's a deployment is completed, and you provide all the information.
Okay, that's cool. Good. Yeah, I do think probably my first 2 questions are probably, I don't want to say inappropriate for this group, but aren't necessarily relevant to this group. So mine are around sort of just tracking deployments to production metrics and that kind of thing. So Alessio, I see you answered my second question around the environment feature being flexible enough for some of this stuff. So I don't think this is the right venue for these questions, but thank you.
As a follow-on to that answer about the API, is there a way using the API to decrement that count?
No, I'm quite sure the deployment is just, you can add thing, but not remove.
Okay. Thank you.
And for your other questions, John, we'll make sure the releases stage group know about them so that you can get an actual answer on this, because they will certainly have the answer for you.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah, if you want to discuss the first one, Amy, actually is, well, the fact that we are tracking MTTP as a feature, as a key metrics for our team, and we are doing this in Periscope, is definitely, yeah, it shows a lack of the feature, right? So it could be useful for us as well.
Yes.
Yeah. So
I know it's in their roadmap. Yeah, please go ahead.
I'm actually working on a frequency of deployment API for metrics right now. It's GitLab Ultimate only, but it should be in this milestone. And that is for project scope. So you could get the number of deployments that have been deployed in that project over a period of time, limited to a date range of a quarter, just because of the performance of the query there.
Can you also specify the branch?
No, not yet.
Because that's really my question is related to is we record deployments and deployments over time, but those deployments could be just a review app in a dev branch. I think most people want to know their deployment to production velocity. So
That's a good point.
measuring, yeah. So being able to restrict that count to the master branch, I think, which is where most people deploy to production from, is probably a more important metric than overall deployments.
Since I'm actually working on that right now. It's in review. I can talk to my product manager, Arit, and see if we can get that added, because I don't think that would be too difficult to add right now.
Cool, that'd be awesome, thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks for that, Amy. Glad you're here. I was hoping there'd be somebody from releases here. Fantastic. So Dan, would you like to go ahead?
Hey, everybody. So I'm just thinking about deterministically, well, I said deterministically determining, that's pretty bad. I apologize. What was released in a particular deployment. It's something that's come up a while ago, and I have not seen any updates here, so I apologize if I missed a really cool announcement here that we've been proceeding here, but it's really this idea of like figuring out what'll be in what release so that we can be explicit about when something is available or not, and to whom it becomes available, self-managed customers, and all of those other groups that may or may not be interested in releases.
Cool. Yeah, over to you, Yorick.
Yeah, I was looking up the link to it so I can add it to the doc, but there we go. We added in 13.6 the ability to filter out merge requests that are deployed to a current environment. So you can say staging, production, etc. The API does have functionality so that given a deployment, you can get the merge requests. That itself is not visualized, so there's no page where you can go, click on the deployments and then see their merge requests. You have to go to the merge requests index page basically, and then say, give me all the merge requests that are in production, staging, or whatever, or merge requests that have been deployed in this time window. But it's all focused on merge requests, so not individual commits.
Yeah, that's sorry, I don't know. Sometimes I've been like reverse muting myself recently where I'm unmuted and then I mute myself when I start talking, which is probably valuable for some people. But yeah, that's good. I think what I'm thinking a little bit in terms of is the release post and how EMs can determine something is released and sort of, really be able to be sure about it. And so actually that works better for MRs than commits. Well, that I believe would work better with MRs than just having a commit being part of a deploy. So that's cool. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thanks for those questions. Does anybody else have any questions they'd like us to answer?
I have another one if no one else has questions. I didn't get a chance to write it down though, so I apologize. What's the team really focused, the delivery team? What's the next big exciting thing that the delivery team is working on to release?
That's a great question. So kind of the overarching big exciting thing is always making deployments and releases faster and safer. But I think we actually have all the DRIs. So DRIs, would you like to give a bit of an overview of what you're currently working through? So Alessio, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. So there is this, well, one of the goals of the delivery team is automating ourselves out of our work. So basically there are some parts of the deployment process that are still manual, and we take rotation as release managers basically every 2 months. So one of the direction is trying to remove all the works that requires us to act manually. So automating rollbacks and completely automating deployment up to production. And another thing we are working now in this regard is we are going to simplify some of our pipelines because they were built over time and we accumulated too much complexity. So now we are focusing on moving all of our deployments back to a single pipeline in release tools so that we can actually focus more also on dogfooding our own features, because right now we have too many pipelines around in several projects in several instances. So it's really hard to get to use our own features that are designed usually for a project level and not that much on multiple projects. So that's for my side.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I'm working currently on automating changelog generation within GitLab itself, because we have our custom tooling for it. Like so many projects out there, everybody has their own thing. So we're building that into GitLab, which touches upon parts in GitLab, parts in GitLab, but also in our own release tooling. With ultimately the idea being that you just send an API call. You say, hey, this is my new version. This is sort of the range of commits that went into that version, or will go in that version actually. And then GitLab takes care of updating the changelog for you and all that stuff.
Awesome. Over to you, Jav.
For like the Kubernetes migration work, which is what myself and John Skarbek is working on. The next big thing for us is probably just going to be moving the next service to Kubernetes. We just finished Git HTTPS and Git SSH. Following that, we're going to be creating a new service for WebSockets to segment WebSockets from the rest of our fleet, which is currently mixed in with the Git traffic. Following that, then we're going to be creating a dedicated service for API and web. Those are currently running in VMs, so we're looking forward to getting those over to Kubernetes. Once that's done, then our entire front end will be serviced by Kubernetes pods. Also currently right now, Sidekick is also in Kubernetes, and we're except for the jobs that have to do with GitLab Pages, which still relies on NFS, but that should be changing soon. So I think that's it for me. Does anyone else here in delivery want to speak?
Just to tie all those three things together, so we kind of have these three focuses at the moment. One is around the pipelines themselves and reducing complexity. One is about dog fooding and how we can actually bring more of our deployment process and our release process into actually things that GitLab features either that we exist that we start using, or expanding them so they also work for our use case. And then finally with Kubernetes, all of these things we get kind of out of the box deployment capabilities once that's completed as well. So at some point, these three all kind of come together and will give us a much more powerful deployment process. By powerful, I mean fast. Cool. Are there any other questions? One question I had for people who are in some way linked to deployments and releases, either you benefit from them or you're doing them or somehow like you're sort of linked to somehow, is I'm curious to know what people think would be, if there was one thing you could magically change about the way we deploy or release with GitLab, what would that thing be?
Yeah, I'm always, well, I'd love to see like real time, but that's like definitely the big magic wand, right? There's so many factors, not least of which is, access, permissions, impact, measuring, having good, metrics to determine how things are going. So I'd love to see an engineer merges something into master, and then let's live right away. That'd be really, really cool, particularly at the scale we're running at. But I recognize what a big ask that is. So I'm not sitting here stamping my feet expecting that to be done or anything. So, or even possible necessarily, depending on how the organization looks at it overall.
I think we'd love to see the same thing as we track on MTTP. Like that's the ultimate goal, is it's like 5 minutes. I think from my side, I would love to have a way to eject a MR out of one of our packages without having to run it right through all of our environments. Or maybe I'm thinking like have the pipeline so fast that it doesn't matter. I think it's we quite often take the cautious approach of reverting an MR that we believe may be causing problems. Excuse me. And the time that takes to actually revert it and rebuild, go through our staging and canary environments is quite long. So I'd love to see a way to just magically eject something and be able to continue things forwards.
I'd say for my customers, it would probably be, that one magical thing would be to just have full HA deployments in Kubernetes. I understand the challenges. I explain them all the time. But, since you ask about magic, I'll throw that one out there.
Yeah, that's a great one. What sort of things are people struggling with on the kind of with their Kubernetes deployments?
So when they try to really go highly available with Kubernetes, at least the recommendations I've heard recently have been that the backend services, Postgres, Redis, and Giddily still have to be outside the cluster. And customers would just like the whole thing to magically be in the cluster. And I understand there's not an HA cluster ready Postgres, and I don't think it's really our place to write one, but that's certainly the request that I hear frequently from clients.
Yeah, that makes sense. Cool. Are there any other either comments, questions, or anything else anyone would like to discuss? No, in which case, I have to say thank you so much to everyone who's asked questions, and a huge thank you, Dan, for writing all the notes. Like, amazing. Do you want to verbalize this stuff, Jason?
I actually was avoiding it because it's more on the distribution side than delivery.
Please go for it.
So when it comes to where does the state live and why does it not live in Kubernetes, this is really more about how we're doing the charts and what our recommendations are based on our actual understanding of the applications. When it comes to Postgres, we actually currently recommend that you just run a Postgres external to our chart because we don't ship a easily flippable single Postgres to multi Postgres. It's not that easy to do, and even in the omnibus, it's not easy. You can easily make use of another provider's chart in Kubernetes to do Postgres HA. Just we recommend you not use ours.
Okay.
When it comes to Redis, we're basically in the same boat in that doing it well is not easy, and we don't want to reinvent the wheel, so we're relying on Bitnami's Redis chart. And right now, they too actually have a split between the individual Redis and then doing Redis in HA with multi-Redis. That's something that we continue to rely on upstream for the time being. We actually have a poorly, admittedly, documented methodology to flip Redis to be Sentinel ready within our chart, but we need to extend and expand on the documentation of how to do that using Bitnami's chart. The big one is Giddily. That's the one everybody wants to see in there. I'm not arguing with it in any way. The reason we recommend it be outside is it's so easy to get wrong. Giddily has high I/O rates at large scale. If you are hammering the poor thing with Git pulls and all this, you can actually crush the individual Kubernetes node on which the Gitly service is running if you don't understand how the application behaves and the implications of having 100 nodes do git pull at the top of the hour every hour. This is much easier to handle when you don't have who knows what competing for CPU, network, disk. We've had customers in the past who had 100% Kubernetes native deployments, and we have had some very unfortunate experiences for those users, because despite having a dedicated node for Gitly and giving it the same amount of traffic they gave it elsewhere, the constraints that were put on it resulted in Gitly literally just being kicked because it used more memory or CPU than it was supposed to. And it's really bad experience when your stateful service that's that critical just goes from your services list and disappears off the cluster. It comes back really fast, but you shouldn't have to deal with that.
Fantastic. Thanks for that.
Yeah, and Dan, thank you for verbatim writing that down.
It's
very
like
impressive.
if you're trying to keep up with it, like you can't actually summarize, otherwise you just lose track of it. So sometimes it's a little bit too wordy. I apologize for that, but you're welcome.
It's fantastic. It's a great skill. Fantastic. Is there anything else anybody would like to bring up today? Are there any updates or progress things on any of the work we have going on that we've covered that people would like us to share more widely? Like, are you getting enough visibility of what's going on?
I guess I wonder, did that release went out in the release post, the filtering the MRs, right? That's actually in a deployment. Presumably it went out in the release post. Did we also put that in Engineering Week in Review? Because I have been reading that. I'm not sure if I saw it. I just missed it because it was something I skimmed over.
Yeah, it was in there like I think a week earlier before the release, something like that.
Oh, okay, so I just missed it. Oh, thank you for that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today, for all the questions. And say, once again, Dan, super typing. Very, very impressed. So thanks for doing that. Brilliant. Enjoy the rest of your days, everyone. We'll see you all next month sometime. Cool. Take care.